All right, so this lecture is going to be about summarized written text. And this is our first lesson for the writing task. And you'll get two tasks in your writing test. The first one is going to be summarized written text. You'll get about 10 minutes to do the task. And then you will have to write either one essay or two essays. Okay, so this one is about summarized written text. And we're going to be talking about how to approach this text. So let me share my screen and let's get straight into it. For today is, first of all, we're going to look at summarized written text. We'll have a little bit of intro and I'll introduce the summarized written text. And then we'll talk about strategies. What are the strategies that we can put in place? Then we'll touch on scoring. Then we'll look at summaries and what a good summary is and how to summarize. What are the characteristics of a good summary? Then we're going to look at how to identify a topic, all right? And we'll look at different paragraphs and identifying the topic and the main theme of any written text. Okay, then we'll learn how to paraphrase the main ideas, because we will want to paraphrase when we are writing a good summary. We will want to paraphrase the text from the text that is presented to us. And then we'll look at grammar and how we can use grammar to write a good summary. Okay, and then we'll do a lot of practice as well, as always. Okay, so let's get into it. What is a summarized written text? Well, you will be presented a text, quite a large text, to be honest, and you will have to summarize it in one sentence. Now, this is very challenging. A lot of people think that, okay, I can write a summary, but writing a summary it might be easy, but to add another layer of complexity onto it, you have to do that in one sentence, okay? And the minimum amount of words that you can write is 5 words, and the maximum amount of words that you can write is 75 words. So it's quite challenging. Having that limit of words is another complexity. All right, you should either use a complex or a compound sentence, which we will talk about in more detail later on, for more than one ideas. So a sentence in English, and the structure of a simple sentence is you've got subject plus verb plus object, right? And you can use that very well for one idea, but if you want to present more than one ideas, then you will either have to use a complex or a compound sentence, which uses two sentences and writes it in one sentence. So you have one clause, and then you have a connecting conjunction, and then you write another clause. It can be either a dependent clause or an independent clause, all right? And that's when the complex and compound sentence come into place. We'll have to write the main and supporting details. So the main point, we'll start our summary with the main point, and then we'll add the supporting details. And this is very important that you write supporting details, because a summary will not be complete without the supporting details. So let's look at two summaries here, which has been written in one sentence, but one of them, both of them are using the complex or compound sentences. Okay, so let's look at the first summary here. Legal rights and safeguards lead to long-lived investments by individuals, which have a far higher impact on raising living standards of countries than these countries' natural resources, right? So you look on the right-hand side, you can see the explanation, which have. So you've got a comma, and then you have which have, which introduces a relative clause, right? So it's a relative supporting detail to the first clause, which is legal rights and safeguards lead to long-lived investments by individuals. That's the main clause, but then you are adding more supporting details using which have. So which is a pronoun that you can use as well, creating a complex sentence. And this is a complex sentence, okay, which have far higher impacts on raising living standards of countries than these countries' natural resources. Now look at the second sentence or second summary. Just-in-time production synchronizes goods produced with demand, and many companies employ this method to control cost. This method, right? So we are using a conjunction which is and I will introduce you more conjunctions along the way. But you can use, if you want to add more details, you can use and it joins the simple sentence together with to produce a compound sentence. You've got another, many companies employs this method to control costs. That is another sentence, and you've got a sentence, just-in-time production synchronizes goods produced with demand. And you're using a conjunction to connect these two. This is called a compound sentence. All right. Now let's talk about strategies. All right. Before you actually write the summary, you must read the passage very carefully. Okay. Focusing on the content, infer the meaning of any unfamiliar words. If you don't know the word, if you don't know the meaning of any word, you can infer the meaning by looking at the context. Okay. And reread the passage. So once you have read the passage once, you reread the passage and take notes of the topic. So write down on your erasable booklet, what is the topic of this summary, or the text, and what are the key words that I can use potentially in my summary. Now, once you start writing, you want to focus on the keywords and the topic, and want to make sure that you are including the topic, or you're actually starting your summary with the topic, and then you're adding the keywords and the supporting details. Do not include your own ideas. Now, if you're writing a summary, and let me make it very, very clear to you, if you're writing a summary and you are writing a summary that is based on your ideas, or you are writing completely different to what the text is, you're going to score 0. Okay. So you got to be very, very careful that you are not using your own opinion, and you're not using your own ideas, or you're not using something that you do not understand. Okay. Imagine you have to write this for a person that hasn't read this. So once you're writing a summary, you can imagine, and it helps quite a lot, that think about it, that you're writing this summary to convey the message to another person that hasn't read this text, right? So how would you explain this, or how would you summarize it for other people to understand what the text is about? If you can imagine that, then it will be easier for you to write the summary, because you will take on the most important bits from the text and summarize it in a way that other people can understand. That's the mindset you need to have. And you will use grammatical structures that you feel confident about. So conjunctions, you're using conjunctions to present two ideas or connect two ideas, you should know how to use them, right? For example, we saw how we use which, a pronoun, and how we use conjunction like and. You should know how to use them. If you're not sure about a conjunction and you don't know how to use them, do not try to use them. Try to be safe with the grammatical structures that you're familiar with. Okay. All right. So these are some of the strategies. And then after you have written, check that the content of your summary has the main ideas, has the essential information, essential supporting information, without which your summary will be incomplete. So you want to make sure that you have included the main idea in the start, and you've included the essential information. Okay. You got to also make sure that the length of your summary is not less than 75 words and more than 5 words. Okay. And it should be one sentence with only one full stop in the end. Okay. Please check your grammar, spelling, and punctuation, because you will lose your marks for all of these 3 things. And I'll talk about scoring after this. All right, let's talk about scoring. You get marks for content, form, grammar, and vocabulary. Let's talk about them individually. First, content. If you have covered all key points that have been addressed without misrepresenting the topic, misrepresentation of topic will score 0. So if you haven't understood the topic, I'll again emphasize that understanding the topic is super important. You don't want to write something that is but that's not the main idea of the text. Okay, so first of all, understand that text and write and include that main idea in your paragraph or in your summary. Okay, in terms of form, it's pretty straightforward. It should be one sentence and it should be between 5 to 75 words. Grammar, sentence structure, it should have a main clause and it should have a subordinate clause, which is either dependent clause or independent clause. Okay, vocabulary, it should be appropriate word choice, correct synonyms to show variety, because obviously you want to paraphrase. You can take some of the words from the from the text and you want to paraphrase and use synonyms, right? So if you use synonyms, but it should be correct. If you're using synonyms, that should be correct synonyms for that context, okay? And you want to show variety because you want to score good for your vocabulary marks, all right? This is either correct or incorrect. It's scored as either correct or incorrect. If it's incorrect, you lose all the marks. And your reading and writing is scores are affected. So you score both for your reading and writing, not just writing. Although it's in the writing section, you do score on your reading score as well. All right, let's look at good summary. What is a good summary? All right, what are the characteristics of good summary? What is a written summary? First of all, let's talk about what a summary is. It's a brief written statement of main points of a reading or discussion, right? It's a brief written statement of the main points. You don't want to write everything. That's what a good written summary is. Otherwise, it won't be a summary, isn't it? It will be just details. What information is required when we summarize a brief reading passage? What information is required when we summarize a brief reading passage? All the main points, as we discussed, needs to be given, and the topic and the content of the reading needs to be accurately presented, but examples are usually omitted. So you don't want to, if you see a lot of examples in your text, eliminate them. Examples are details, and you don't want to write details in your summary. Okay, you can summarize the examples and you can just give the overview of the examples, not rather than writing the whole examples. And what verb tense is usually used in summary? So if you think about it, you're writing a summary. You are just talking about what you read and you're writing a summary. It cannot be in the past tense, for example, right? So it should be in the present simple tense, because the writer is giving a factual statement. So normally when you will read a text, you will read factual statements of the reader's reading's main point, right? So in a summary, the writer's not retelling. So when you're writing a summary, you're not retelling personal information. You're not giving a narrative or talking about past or future, or you're not giving your own opinion, right? So when you're paraphrasing and you're rewriting the summary, you want to use simple present tense, because that's the right representation of the text that you've read. Okay, so always be careful that your tense, your tenses that you're using in your summary should be present simple tense. What are some of the other special grammatical features of a summary? Summaries condense a lot of information into limited number of words. To do this, long and sometimes complex noun phrases are used to describe the main ideas. So use noun phrases to summarize the main ideas. Noun phrases often contain dependent clauses, which add information that modifies or elaborates on the main noun in the phrase. So for example, studies have shown that men play more football than women. Then you want to use they are also the gender that goes to the gym more often, right? So you want to use the noun phrase they, right? You want to use a pronoun to be able to explain what the main noun is doing, right? So that's a dependent clause, sorry. And that's how you want to summarize it. So these are grammatical features, and I'll show you in practice how these look like and what kind of dependent clauses that we can use. All right, now I want you to read these three summaries. You can pause the video here, and I want you to read these three summaries and think about which one is the best summary, which one describes, for example, this one, the text here is summarized written text. These summaries are describing what a summarized written text is. Okay, which summary do you think explains it and summarizes it in the best way? Okay, I hope you got a chance to look at these three summaries. I'm going to read them out to you, and then we're going to review and we're going to see which summary explains the summarized written text test item in the best way, right? Summary number one, I mean, first of all, the first one that I would want to talk about is I think, okay? So when you're writing things like I think, that is your own opinion, right? You don't want to write your own opinion. No one is asking you to write opinions here. You want to just summarize the text. So I think summarized written text test item is difficult because you only have 10 minutes to read a really long reading, and you are assessing on so many items, such as whether you use correct and appropriate words and grammar, correct content and form. So this one doesn't seem like it's summary. This one seems like someone's opinion. I think summarized written text is difficult, right? So this is not a good summary because it's talking about opinion. And that's why in the start we talked about not talking about your own opinion. Okay. Let's look at summary two. The passage was about an item which required test takers to summarize information that they read in only one sentence. Some of the information is wrong here, but also the passage was about. So this one is writing in the past tense, was about. This is not how you want to write the summary. This shouldn't be in the past. You can't use past tense. You have to use simple present, and you have to summarize the written text. So this one is saying the passage was about an item which required test takers to summarize information that they read in only one sentence. Okay, it kind of is lacking essential information as well. It's just too short, and it's also in the past tense. Now look at the summary three. The summarized written text test item requires test takers to accurately summarize a reading of up to 300 words in one sentence using correct form, grammar, and vocabulary. So that's the best summary. Why? Because it talks about what it requires, and it's simple present. You can see requires test takers to accurately summarize a reading of up to 300 words in one sentence using, and these are the essential details we talked about, using correct grammar, form, and vocabulary. Okay, so this is how you would want to summarize. Let's look at some feedback here. So summary one, again, gives the writer's personal opinion rather than reporting main points. Don't want to include personal opinions here. It gives unnecessary examples, and it contains spelling, weather, and vocabulary errors caused and really long are too formal for an academic task, and grammatical errors are assessing instead of assesses. At 48 words, it is within the word limit for this task. So it's within the word limit, which is 5 to 75 words, but it's still, there you can see the problems with the summary. Summary number two summarizes main points accurately and omits examples. It omits examples, it omits, so that's a good thing, actually. You should omit examples. It accurately uses vocabulary and spelling, but it is inappropriately written in the simple past tense. Okay, we talked about this. We don't want to talk about past tense because we are just writing a summary. We're not saying what happened in the past. Okay, at only 20 words long, it could include additional key information such as the length of the reading text or the scoring criteria. Okay, and summary 3 presents the main points accurately, omits examples, and accurately uses vocabulary, spelling, and grammar, including the simple present tense. Okay, it is also within the word limit for this item. Okay, so that's the best summary, and that's how you want to summarize things. So that was just one example warm-up activity. Now let's just look at a text and how do we identify topic, theme, or main ideas. Okay, so the text that you're going to read and summarize is about dowries, money or property that a bride brings to her husband when she marries. Now, understanding the topic is super important because you want to introduce your summary with the topic or a main point, right? So the things that I want you to understand here, the questions that I want you to think about are dowries an important part of wedding in your culture? If so, what sort of things are given? What sort of things were given as dowries in traditional culture in the past? And why do you think dowries are given? Okay, so all of your questions you can see are related to dowry, and that's our topic. Now, in this thing, I want you to read 5 of these paragraphs, and I want you to come up with the topic, the main theme or main idea or main point of each paragraph. All right, and then we can see, if you've got 5 paragraphs, we can come up with main points of each paragraph and we can form a summary. Okay, so I want you to pause the video here, read the text, read all 5 paragraphs, and come up with main point of each paragraph. All right, I hope you had a chance to read all 5 paragraphs and come up with the main point of each paragraph. Now, I'm going to read the response here for you, finding the main idea in each paragraph. Number 1, dowry, the money or property a bride brings to her husband at marriage, was common in the past. It flourished throughout much of the ancient world and also in medieval Europe. Okay, so the main idea is the dowry was common in the past, right? And there's a description here. You don't want to include the description because the main idea here is that a dowry was common in the past. The practice of dowry, so reading number 2, the practice of dowry apparently originated when a bride's parents gave her presents. For example, during the Middle Ages, young girls in rural areas received a dowry from their parents to take with them into marriage. Typically, she received a bed when she turned 12, followed by a wardrobe the next year. So the main idea here, and this is one way of looking at it, all right? Everyone might have a different idea about what the main idea is. Yours might be a little bit different, slightly different to this one, but look at this one. The practice of dowries originated when a bride's parents gave her presents. So it's talking about the origination, and later on it's talking about how it developed and all these kind of things. In number 3, as time went on, the dowry developed various functions. So it's talking about functions, and obviously you can talk about all the functions, but if you just said various functions, then you're already summarizing it. You're not really talking about the details of the functions, although it goes on and talks about the functions. So I'm going to read it out and we'll see what are the various functions. A dowry of household goods often helped the newlyweds set up their own home. A dowry of property or jewelry would help the wife support herself if her husband died. Generally, husband returned the dowry to his in-laws if he and his wife divorced or if his wife died childless. So these are some of the functions of dowry, but if you were to summarize it, you can always use the dowry developed various functions. Okay, we're just getting important information from here. Number 4, sometimes the groom's family paid for the bride, often to compensate her. And these are the reasons why they paid, groom's family paid for the bride. But you don't want to talk about the reasons. You don't want to talk about what the main idea is. If a groom's family paid for the bride, often to compensate her family for money spent raising her. If bride had been a valuable worker, her family was sometimes compensated for the loss of her economic support. So you're gonna bring in the main idea, which is groom's family paid for the bride. Number 5, today, traditional wedding observances are losing ground. What's happening today, you can touch on that as well, all over the world. However, some traditional cultures, and this is all examples, right? So observances are losing ground, are losing attention, for example, and you can use, synonyms as well, but we'll talk about synonyms later on. But however, some traditional cultures, including gypsies, many Hindus, and certain African societies continue to see dowries as usual part of marriage. For example, a groom of the Roma people or gypsies pays the bride's family for the loss of their daughter. The bride price also ensures the bride will be well treated by her new family. Negotiations between the families of the bride and groom can become quite extensive, with the bride's father calculating how much his daughter has cost him since her birth and how much she could be expected to earn during her lifetime. So this is all the information and the detail, but the main point here is traditional wedding observances are losing ground. So what are signal words? These are identifying the supporting ideas also, and it gives you more information. Supporting ideas. It gives you supporting ideas when it says also, typically, in addition to, the situation is, in this situation, it, these, and however. On the other hand, but conversely, also identify supporting ideas. It's used for contrasting, and for example, for instance, such as it's used for identifying the examples. All right, now we're gonna look at summary writing strategies and paraphrasing main ideas. Okay, so you just understood how to highlight the main ideas. Now we want to paraphrase them as well, right? Because we want to use variety in our vocabulary, right? So 2 examples of paraphrasing key words with the test taker. So I want to show you 2 examples of paraphrasing. For example, a dowry was common in the past. A dowry is common in the past. This is from the text. How would you paraphrase it? You could use in the past instead of in the past. You can use traditionally. Traditionally, and these are some of the words that you will have to practice as you do a lot of summaries, and you'll have to do a lot of summaries before you go into the actual exam. But in the past can be replaced by traditionally, and if you use that, you're showing the variety that you have good knowledge of vocabulary. So traditionally, dowries were usual. Okay, so you can use, instead of a dowry was common in the past, traditionally dowries were usual. They both mean the same thing. They both mean the same thing, but you are paraphrasing the main point, and that's what you want to do. Second example, the practice of dowries originated when a bride's parents gave her presents. Originating, so it's talking about the origination. Dowries started, you can simply just say dowries started as family gifts because it's coming from family. Meaning similar, and that's how you want to paraphrase things. You have to get really good at paraphrasing things, because even in essays, you'll have to paraphrase the introduction and everything. So paraphrasing is very, very powerful tool that you have. When introducing a topic or a main idea, an indefinite article, a key noun, a dowry, can be paraphrased with the plural form of key nouns, dowries. So instead of a dowry, you can say dowries. Okay, that's one way to paraphrase as well. Using paraphrase will definitely give you high marks, because you're showing variety in vocabulary. All right, now we're going to look at grammar. Okay, so in terms of these strategies, we haven't looked at grammar, but we want to look at grammar and how we can write more than one clauses and how we can connect them. That's where the grammar plays a vital role. All right. So in terms of noun phrases that combine information from 2 or 3 paraphrase notes, dependent relative clauses beginning with which, who, or that are a good tool for adding more information to a noun. Dependent clauses are often used to add extra meaning. So dependent clauses are dependent on the independent clause. So always remember the main clause comes first and then the dependent clause comes first. Dependent clause is the supporting clause of the independent clause. So dependent clauses are often used to add extra meaning or detail to a noun or a noun phrase. Okay. 2 dependent clauses in summary 1, which originated as gift from parents to their daughters. And although it is not very common in many societies, both clauses give additional information about the history and prevalence of dowries. Okay, so you've got 2 dependent clauses that are dependent on the main clause. That's the first clause that will be about dowry, right? So if you go back to this one, a dowry was common in the past. That's the main clause. And then you've got that originated. So you're using that to talk about dowry. Now you're not saying dowry all the time. You're saying that originated when a bride's parents gave her presents, which developed various functions. All of these words to connect these dependent clauses and the independent clauses with the independent clause in the start. The dependent clauses are not grammatically correct if they're written without independent clause. So very important that you can't just write these 2 clauses which originated as a gift from parents to their daughter, although it is not very common in societies. They will not make sense unless you add an independent clause in the start, which is going to be about dowry is the practice of the past, for example, and then you move on and talk about additional information. Okay, so be careful that you must have an independent clause in the start. All right, I want you to pause the video here and I want you to read all of these 4 summaries and think about which summary is the best summary here. And when you come back, we'll review. All right. I hope you had a chance to read all the 4 summaries. I'm going to read the summaries with you, and we are going to look at the explanation that has been given to us in terms of which summary is the best summary here. Summary number 1, a dowry which originated as a gift from parents to their daughter served many different functions, and although it is not very common in many societies, it is still an important aspect of traditional weddings in some communities. This summary includes and synthesizes key information from the reading into one sentence. So it is a one sentence, that's a good thing, and it's giving you key information, that's a great thing so far. It uses dependent relative clauses which originated, so it is using which originated, a dowry which originated, although it is, and it's also using although it is, another conjunction although, very successfully, and it is grammatically accurate. It uses vocabulary, spelling, and punctuation accurately. Okay, and the spelling and everything is fine as well. Vocabulary is good, punctuations are fine. At 38 words, it is within the 75 word limit. So it's a good summary so far. Okay, that's an example of a good summary. Now, summary number 2, as a social practice developed for various functions, a dowry is still a part of marriage in some traditional cultures, although not as common as it used to be. As a social practice developed for various functions, a dowry is still a part of marriage in some cultures, although not as common as it used to be. The explanation here is this summary includes and synthesizes key information from reading into one sentence. It uses a dependent relative clause as a noun phrase as a practice very successfully, and it is grammatically accurate. It uses vocabulary, spelling, and punctuation accurately. It is 29 words long and is within the word limit. It is best of the 4 summaries. So it's a good summary where it talks about social practice developed for various functions. It talks about the various functions. Dowry is still part of the marriage. That's the dependent clause in some traditional, independent clause. The first clause is dependent, and the second clause is a dowry is still a part of marriage in some traditional cultures, although and not as common as it used to be. Okay, so that's really the gist of the whole text, 5 paragraphs long, and it summarized it beautifully. Okay, but that is a really tough one to kind of cut down all the fat from the text. And if you got something like summary 1, I think you still will score really good marks. Summary 3, look at summary 3. Dowries were originally gifts from parents to their daughters and served many different functions. While not very common in many societies, they are still important in some communities. Now, the biggest problem I see with this summary is that there are 2 sentences. Can you get any marks for this? Let's read out the explanation. This summary includes and synthesizes key information from the reading. It uses a contrasting dependent relative clause while not very common, very successfully, and it is grammatically accurate. It uses vocabulary, spelling, and punctuation accurately. It is 28 words long and is within the word limit. However, and this is the crucial part here. However, it is written in 2 sentences and will receive a score of 0 in all 5 vectors. You will score 0 if you wrote more than 1 sentence. So very careful. Be very careful there. Do not use more than 1 full stop. Only use it in the end. Use commas instead of full stop if you want to do that. All right, talking about summary 4. Sometimes a groom's family pays for the bride's dowry, and maybe some traditional families continue to do this in some places. Now, seems like this summary is talking about groom's family, and it's not really talking about what the dowry is. Okay, so that can be an incorrect summary, but we'll read the explanation and understand what's wrong with this summary. Okay, but seems wrong to me. This summary includes some key information from the passage, and this is the key information, but it's not. Is it the main point? Let's see. However, it has placed incorrect emphasis on the role of groom's family and has not described the development of a dowry as a social function. It is grammatically accurate, but instead of using dependent clauses to give extra information in a sentence, it links 2 simple independent clauses with and. Sometimes a groom's family pays for the bride's dowry. That's one independent clause. And maybe some traditional families continue to do this in some places. That's also an independent clause. So it uses vocabulary, spelling, and punctuation accurately. It is 21 words long and is within the word limit, but it could be developed a little more. Okay, so you can write a summary like that, and it's only 1 sentence, but you're not going to score very highly because you're missing the main point, you're missing the main theme of it. So it's very important that you understand what the summary is about, and and you start with that. All right, this is going to be a summary that I want you to practice in time conditions. Allow yourself 10 minutes to finish this activity. Pause the video here, and your time starts now. Read and try to apply all the skills that we talked about. Come up with the topic, understand what the topic is, come up with every paragraph should have some key information, and try to connect all of them. It's topic first, then supporting information afterwards, and use the conjunctions to connect them. Okay, only write 1 sentence, right? All right, so I hope you had a chance to look at it in 10 minutes, and you might have written a summary. So we will compare your summary with this summary, but let me read it out for you. So the first things first, we're going to read out we're going to read out the whole text, and we will look at the summary after. So the summary the text starts by saying the extent to which the media are largely free to investigate and publish details of public figures' private lives varies from country to country. Public figures, and think about it. I mean, did we get what the paragraph is about? To extent to which the media are legally free to investigate and publish details of public figures' private lives varies from country to country. Public figures include people such as politicians, film stars, musicians, and sports stars. Countries like France are much stricter on protecting personal privacy than, for example, Britain. People have a right to know about those in power. In the case of politicians, the public. So I think reading this first sentence kind of gives me idea that public figures and should public have a right to know what public figures are doing. That to me seems like the topic, right? And should they be legally free to investigate in their internal affairs? That will be my kind of gist from the first paragraph. Okay. Let's see what we can get from the second paragraph. People have a right to know about those in power. In case of politicians, the public should be aware of corruption. This is detail, right? So we don't want to include that, but we'll see. The public should be aware of corruption or inappropriate behavior. The public also has a right to access the lives of celebrities who generate revenue by making films, music, TV, sporting appearances, or concerts, because their income is dependent on the general public. So it's kind of a reason of why public should be able to have access to their lives. So I would probably not include all the reasons, but I will kind of summarize them as well. So there is an opportunity for me to look at some of these reasons and talk about, support the point of the summary. All right, lastly, public figures know that the fame comes up, that with fame comes a price, and that price is constant scrutiny. Okay. In fact, many celebrities actively seek media exposure in order to advance their careers, revealing to the media many aspects of their personal lives. So obviously, it talks about the fame, and these celebrities might want to get that fame by showing off their lives. Once success has been bought in such a fashion, it is then somewhat critical to complain of press intrusion into those few aspects the star would prefer to remain hidden. All right, so let's look at this summary and see if it kind of close to your summary. Did you get the main points and what your summary is talking about? If it's similar to this summary and you've got the main idea in the start, and then you're adding supporting details, the most important details, as long as you're doing that, I think you're good. It doesn't have to be completely exactly like this. If the meaning of your summary and this summary is similar, I think you've done a good job. All right, so let's look at this. Media scrutiny of public figures. Perfect. So scrutiny, we took that from the text as well. Or you could even say investigation, right? So media scrutiny of public figures should be supported because politicians need to be monitored. So it should be supported because politicians need to be monitored for policy concerns, and other public figures depend on the general public for their income. So it's talking about the income, it's talking about policy concerns, and the main idea was that media scrutiny of public figures should be supported. So you must have come up with a different way of explaining it, but if you got that main idea and you talked about the policy concerns, which was true for politicians, and talked about other public figures depending on their income, a general public's income. I think you're on track to do that. So let's look at the commentary here. The summary includes and synthesizes key information from reading into one sentence. It is grammatically accurate. It uses vocabulary, spelling, and punctuation accurately. It is 25 words and is within the word limit. Okay, so that's just one example, all right? We'll do more practice. Okay, I want you to pause the video here. And again, I'll give you about 10 minutes. I want you to write a good summary, use the same principles that we discussed. We will come back and we will review this. We will review the summary and we'll comment on how we can get the best summary. All right, I hope you got a chance to look at it and write a good summary. By now, you must be improving the way you write summaries. Do 20, and if you can do 20 summaries before you land into your actual exam, I think it's going to really build that habit of reading articles, getting the right main points, and how you combine the main points with the supporting points in your summary. Okay, so I'm going to read this out for you, and we will try to get a kind of sense of what the main topic is and what the supporting points are, and then I will share the summary with you. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has released a new report on anthropogenic climate change. The findings of the report include the following. The world's average surface temperature has increased by around 0.74 degrees over the past 100 years, 1906 to 2005. A warming of about 0.2 degrees is projected for each of the next 2 decades. So reading this already, I understand there is a report outlined, and I can talk about IPCC has released a report, which the main idea here is about global warming, I guess. So climate change or global warming is kind of the theme that it's talking about. This report is about that, right? And I mean, we don't have to really talk about numbers here because these are specific things that we can talk about, but we can kind of say, what the main theme is. The best estimates for sea level rise due to ocean expansion and glacier melt by the end of century compared to 1989 to 1999 levels have narrowed to 28 to 58 centimeter versus 9 to 88 centimeter in the 2001 report. Due to improved understanding, however, larger values of up to 1 meter by 2100 cannot be ruled out of out if ice sheets continue to melt as temperature rises. Sea ice is projected to shrink in both Arctic and Antarctic regions. Large areas of Arctic Ocean could lose year-round ice cover by the end of the 21st century if human emissions reach the higher end of current estimates. The extent of Arctic sea ice has already shrunk by about 2.7% per decade since 1978, with the summer minimum declining by about 7.1% per decade. So you've got a lot of numbers, a lot happening. All right, we're still keeping, this is our first reading, so we'll read more information there, but we'll note down the more the main ideas of each paragraph. Next, it talks about snow cover has decreased in most regions, especially in spring. The maximum extent of frozen ground in the winter-spring season decreased by about 7% in the Northern Hemisphere over the later half of the 20th century. The average freezing date for rivers and lakes in the Northern Hemisphere over the past 150 years has arrived later by some 5.8 days per century, while the average breakup date has arrived earlier by 6.5 days per century. Lastly, it talks about it is very likely that precipitation will increase at high altitudes and likely it will decrease over most subtropical land regions. The patterns of these changes is similar to what has been observed during the 20th century. Okay, so it is talking about a lot of technical stuff and what's happening in the environment. The main theme here is that this is about climate change, and the findings are talking about surface temperature increasing, warming. It talks about sea level rise due to ocean expansion. It talks about shrink in both Arctic and Antarctic regions. It talks about snow cover has decreased in most regions. It talks about precipitation will increase, and all of these things you need to combine. So let's look at the summary here. And you don't have to combine everything, but you can summarize it, right? Sometimes you can't really combine the main things, but you can summarize it. So I will show you the B1 level response and how it's written, and I will give you the explanation. So in terms of B level, look at the summary. This one talks about United Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report that climatist, there's some spelling mistakes as well, but let's just look at the content here. Changes in Northern Hemisphere will cause drastic change in sea current and will raise the sea level. So the explanation here by Pearson has been given to us, and they say that while the response includes one key detail, and it's got only one key detail, it doesn't really talk about the summary and the main point. Other information from the passage is omitted and misinterpreted. The response does not receive full credit for grammar because of missing or incorrect use of prepositions and verbs. The vocabulary used is appropriate for the context. There are 3 spelling errors, and you don't want to make spelling errors. I mean, these are easy errors that you can make. You always want to write a summary and reread your summary and check for spelling and punctuation. Always do that. Always start your sentence with capital letter and end with a full stop, and check your commas where you've placed them. You want to have the commas before your conjunctions and connecting words. Although weakly constructed, the response is 1 complete sentence. The word count is 26 words. So that's why it scores B1. In terms of B2, let's read their summary first. Due to the latest report of IPCC about world climate, greenhouse effect has affected the Earth severely on various aspects. So it does talk about various aspects, and it summarizes it in that way because there has been they've given you a lot of information and a lot of aspects, but still it's not enough in my opinion. So let's read the explanation here. It says the summary does not include any supporting details or key details. So you don't want to be you don't want to summarize in that way where you're not including any kind of detail. You want to include some of the details. So minor grammatical mistake prevents this response from receiving full credit for grammar. Although intended meaning of the sentence is clear, the use of due to instead of according to. So due to the latest report, it's not really due to the latest report that the climate is changing. It's according to the latest report, right? So that's pretty easy and straightforward. Don't make that mistake. So makes it seems that IPCC report caused the greenhouse effect, right? So that's not the case. There is one spelling error, and again, I will emphasize on not making any spelling mistakes. The response is 1 complete sentence of 22 words. Okay, C1 response. Look at the summary here, the new UN report, and you don't have to mention IPCC. You can, it's not a problem if you do that. You could say a new UN report finds that increasing surface temperatures around the world are causing rising sea level. So we talked about, we took that rising sea level from paragraph, I think one of the paragraphs. Then we looked at shrinking sea ice and snow cover. We took that from, I think, 2 paragraphs, and then changes in precipitations, right? So that's also one of the paragraphs. So you took some of the major information and you didn't talk about any of the numbers, because that's really detailed, so you want to summarize it. And look at the explanation here. The topic has been accurately discussed and supporting points are included. The vocabulary used is precise. All words are spelled correctly, and the response is one complete sentence of 27 words. Okay, so that's a good, that's how, I hope your summary was close enough to this one. And if there are any changes, and if your B1 response, if your summary is like a B1 response, you can see what are the problems there. You can, if your summary is like a B2 response, you want to fix that, and you want to achieve at least C1 response to be able to score really highly in this part of the test. Okay, we're gonna do the last activity of today's lecture, and I want you to pause the video here again. Take 10 minutes to do this activity on your own. Read the article, get the main points from each paragraph, and understand the main theme, the topic of this paragraph or this text. And start with your text, and then write the supporting details that you think are the most important, that should be included. Okay, I'll see you in 10 minutes. All right, I hope you had a chance to read the article and be able to write a summary as well. And we're gonna review this article. First, I'm gonna read it out, and then we're gonna look at B1, B2, and C1 responses, and I will give you some explanation around that. All right, so it starts with, for millions of years, Mediterranean sea turtles have been coming to the shore of southern Lebanon to lay their eggs. Every summer, their babies hatch and literally run for their lives on the strip of land that separates their nest from the sea. So, I mean, for me, I already am thinking about that this is about the turtles, sea turtles. This has to be about sea turtles that is laying their eggs in Lebanon. That's probably the topic for me so far. That's what my mind is kind of saying. And endangered species, they have been largely ignored in this part of Lebanon. So it keeps going back to that main topic, and I think that's the main topic. So endangered species, so we know that they're endangered. They have had been largely ignored in this part of Lebanon until 2 women set out to protect them. Okay, that's interesting. All right. Mona Khalil was inspired by a walk on the beach during a visit to her homeland when she first saw the turtles. Upon learning that they were close to disappearing from her country, Khalil decided to come back and do something about them. So this lady is trying to help them. Okay, I think this is interesting. I can include that in my as a keyword as well, and a key information that I need to include in my summary. I'll keep a note on that. Keep a note of that. The next year, 2000, she returned and teamed up with Habiba Fayed, who shared her passion for the environment. Okay, so there's another lady, there are 2 ladies. They opened a bed and breakfast in the Khalil family home to finance their efforts. So they needed finance, and they finance their efforts. So I will see if I want to include that. Maybe I can do without it. Guests could simply vacation, or in the spirit of eco-tourism, they could help the owners protect the turtles' nest. So basically, they could simply vacation, or in the spirit of ecotourism, they could help the owners protect the turtle nests and keep the beach clean. So the tourists are also kind of helping. So I can include that information as well if you wanted to. I'll see. And then female turtle travel to exact spot where they were born to dig nests in the sand, laying an average of 70 to 100 eggs. That is obviously some numbers that you don't want to mention any numbers, I think, for sure. I mean, this is really, really detailed. Okay, so I would avoid that. This is the moment when the women intervene. They protect the nest from predators by burying an iron grid in the sand above the eggs. the space on the grid are large enough to allow the baby turtles to emerge after a month and find their way to the sea and to a chance at life. Okay, so initially, obviously, we want to talk about Mediterranean sea turtles, and that's the topic. What's happening to them? They are getting endangered. They're an endangered species. They have been largely ignored, and two women are trying to protect them. I will include that. Then I would include how they try to protect them by opening a bed and breakfast. Or just not mentioning that, maybe talk about how they protect their nest by cleaning up the beach, or even there are some information that we can talk about here is digging the nest in the sand and how they protected them. So I think that's how I'm going to summarize it. Let's look at the summary. Let's look at B1 response first. For millions of years, the turtles were laying eggs in summer, and the babies run separate their nest. Obviously, this is, the grammar is all over the place. I can't really understand because of the grammar and as too much detail, ignoring the war-torn until two women set out to protect them, and Mona Khalil saw the turtles and decided to do something. So in the end, the baby turtle to emerge after a month. So a lot of ideas all over the place, not really making sense because of the grammar is all over the place as well, and not a good use of the good control of grammar, I would say. So let's read the explanation here. We've got, while the response includes some main points, the other key information from the passage is omitted, and information not in the passage is present. This response demonstrates limited control over simple grammatical structure. That's what I kind of felt as well. The vocabulary is basic. There is one spelling mistake, and the response is one sentence of 56 words. So although there is a lot of content here, it doesn't really have, and grammar is all over the place. So I would say grammar is the weakest here that I've seen so far. All right, B2 level, Mediterranean sea turtles, which is an endangered species, lay 70 to 100 eggs. We want to avoid that kind of detail. We don't want to talk about that detail. But anyway, at the shore of southern Lebanon, but now Mona Khalil with her team protecting there's auxiliary missing, the grammatical problems as well. Turtles, eggs from damaging, so spelling mistake as well, or from predator, the spelling mistake as well, by burying iron grit in the sand above the nest. So it's kind of missing key information as well. So but it still scores B2. So you can see, you can still get really good B2 if someone is kind of going for B2, but I'd urge that you aim for C1 level response. I'll share with you shortly. So look at the explanation here. The topic has been accurately discussed and the supporting points are included. This response does not receive full credit for grammar because of missing or incorrect use of prepositions and verbs. Okay, so again, the grammatical errors are all over the place. The vocabulary used is appropriate for the context. There are 3 spelling mistakes, and the response is one sentence, complete sentence of 45 words. So as you can see, these are some of the mistakes that you want to avoid. All right, let's look at C1 now. And this is the sort of, I hope that's how the summary, that's how your summary was, and that's how the summary that you want to aim for, and see, what's included in the summary. After millions of years of being endangered in war-torn coast of southern Lebanon, Mediterranean sea turtles, that's the main idea, were finally protected. Finally protected by who? By 2 women, Mona Khalil and Habiba Fayed. You can include their names. Even if you don't include the names, they're still 2 women, and that's the most important thing. Who opened a bed and breakfast. I was thinking to include that as well, because how did they help? That's super important. So bed and breakfast with the help of their guests, protected turtles by burying an iron grit in the sand above the eggs. So you want to include how they protected them is super important. These turtles were endangered and how they protected. That's the summary for me. Okay, so look at the explanation here. The topic has been accurately discussed and the supporting points are included. This response demonstrates good control of standard English grammar with very few grammatical errors. So still there are some grammatical errors I would fix, but still is score C1. The vocabulary used is appropriate for the context. All words are spelled correctly, and the response is one complete sentence of 52 words. All right. So today we talked about summarize written text. It's how you start the summary is by reading the first paragraph and understanding the topic. Once you understand the topic, the main thing is super important to get, because if you don't understand the topic, you might write about something else or your opinion, and that you're going to score 0. Okay. Second thing you want to avoid, do not write your opinions. Third thing, you don't write anything in the past, or don't use any other tense other than simple present tense. Okay. And when you're writing the summary, you want to start with writing the main idea, okay, and then the supporting details. And the supporting details will come from the following paragraphs in the text, and you want to connect them by using things like conjunctions, okay? Although, if you're contrasting, you can use however, although, all of these conjunctions. If you are using noun phrases, if you're describing the noun that was in the first clause, then you use noun phrases such as who, that, which, where, things like that. Okay. So I hope you had a good chance of understanding how to write a good summary and understanding what a bad summary looks like as well. I showed you quite a lot of examples where, the bad summaries, you don't want to be writing those kind of summaries, and what to include in your good summary. So I'll see you in the next lesson. This lesson concludes here, and all the best with your studies. I hope you're getting really valuable information so far, and we'll continue giving you great, valuable, practical skills that you need to crack your PTE.